Welcome back, everybody, to our second video in this series, Customer Insights Journeys. Again, I am Rosie, and in this video, we're going to be talking all about feature switches. Now, the next few videos in this series may be settings related, and that is because we want to make sure that before we create our journeys and create our emails, we have all of the available features that we want available to us. So we do have to make sure that all of this is all ready to go before we actually start building out these emails. Now, of course, you can just go ahead and start building them out now, but you might be missing out on some cool stuff. So these feature switches basically control which capabilities are enabled in your application, and understanding them can save you a lot of confusion later or basically just make your life easier because a lot of these do just help speed up the process. So, the goal of this video is not to cover all features that are listed, but to help you understand what these switches do and when you might need them. So, in order to access these feature switches, we do need to make sure that you are on the Customer Insights Journeys app. And then on the very bottom left hand side, you see what we call the area. Now, we do want to switch in that from that area into the settings. So go ahead and select that button and then switch into settings, and we'll go into look for the feature switches table. And so let's go ahead and select that. Now, before continuing, I do want to note that any changes completed here will affect the entire application, not just the individual user. So if you're just going and looking to kind of snoop and enable some items just for yourself, please stop. That is going to affect all users across the environment, anyone who's using that marketing app. And so, if you are not an admin user, please reach out to one and make sure that this is appropriate for you to enable. And it may be the fact that maybe you just don't have permissions to be switching these feature switches on anyway. So, please check in with your admin team in the event that you are not working with your own environment. But yeah, I did just want to point that out there. All right, so let's walk through some of the most common and important features that I like to enable. We'll go ahead and skip over to the email editor section. This is by far one of my favorite sections, and I believe all switches are pretty much important if you want to improve your efficiency at creating emails. These switches not only enhance the email designer, but also provide us with some important features like the send now. If you need to send a quick email blast, this is pretty much your best friend, especially when you know exactly who the audience is and you just create a basic one. You're running a little behind and you're like, you know what, I need to send this as soon as possible. This send now feature allows you to just click that and it'll generate that one off for you and send it over without having to go through the whole journeys process. So, definitely a time saver. The next one, the view in browser, is if you need your audience to have easy access to email content. This is definitely something that I would also turn on. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to always include the view in browser button. You can select when you want to include it in your emails, but it does give you that option if it's turned on for that. So, the next one that I want to review in this section is the Litmus integration. Now, the Litmus integration option is basically a third party integration feature that allows users to easily preview email messages on various platforms. So, in the event that maybe you have an email fully built out and you want to be able to view it in uh, Gmail format, or if you're viewing it on iPhone 16 format from a Gmail account, like that Litmus integration would allow you to view it per device, per program, or you know type of email. So it is a great feature if you really want to crack down on how your formatting looks like on these different devices. I would like to note that the marketing app comes with 100 free previews, but you once you've run out of those previews, you do need to purchase a Litmus subscription if you want to keep using that feature. So you can use it for the 100 previews. I do want to advise that it's not per user, it is per application. So if you use 3, but your peer uses 20, there goes 23 Litmus previews. So I do want to make sure that you are aware of that. And if you would like to try it, you can go ahead and activate this. If not, you can leave it unactivated, and whenever you would like to proceed with looking into it, it's there for you. Now, the next one is CC recipients for emails. Another commonly asked about feature is the CC recipients for emails. Occasionally, our users like to add additional recipients for select audiences. Now, these audience recipients may be a specific person, or maybe they are a user that's somehow related to that contact. So, say I have a segment of about 10 people, but for each of those emails, I also want to CC that contacts manager. And we are tracking that contacts manager within the contact record. And so we would just need to do some mapping in there. And when each of those 10 messages come out, they also add in that manager associated with them. Now, this is a great feature so that we are sending these messages to relevant people. However, I would like to note that any and all interactions within that email that is delivered will count as a behavior for the main recipient. That means if the CC user clicks on a link in that email, that interaction will be counted as if the main recipient clicked on that link instead. So I do want you guys to be aware of that. They're not going to count as individual clicks for the corresponding recipients. It is only going to count against the person who that email was initially sent to, not the CC'd person. So I do want you guys to be aware of that. Next, we have email deduplication. If you have been using D365 long enough, or any marketing app for that matter, you know that duplicate contact records happen all the time. If you have multiple profiles with the same name or email or phone number, this can be a big problem. For example, say I have two contact records. One of them is named Rosie and the other one is named Rosalinda, but they just so happen to have the same email address. Now, I want to send a journey to all contacts within the system. However, if we send it to all contacts, that means that my email will receive it twice, right? Well, if we want to avoid that from happening, we do in fact need to turn on this email deduplication. With this feature enabled, only one email will be delivered per email address in a single journey. The last one I really want to touch on in this section is check contact consent in real-time journeys. If you have been working with CIJ for some time, you may have noticed that the contact record has its own level of consent that is separate from the consent center table. And I know that's very confusing, but basically, a contact record is its own record in its own table. Contact is contact, right? Consent center is a separate table, and consent center does not store contact level information, does not even have a lookup to the contact record. It just stores an email and it stores a phone number and stores a consent for each of those. That's pretty much it. Now, the contact record also has its own level of consent. The contact record also identifies if we can receive marketing messages and if we can receive SMS and even just general messages from the system. These are two separate features. Now, when this feature specifically is disabled, the marketing application will ignore the values on the contact record and rely on the consent center table only for the delivery permissions. However, a lot of the time, the marketing app is built on top of an existing D365 implementation, or maybe there are multiple sources where these contacts are being added from. And so this means that existing contacts may already have some form of opt in, opt out status on that contact record that is not always mapped into the consent record. And so, if that is the case, I would say that you would want to continue looking at the contact record to also check consent because it might be different. So, I would highly encourage, if that is the case, that you do turn this feature on. If the system only contains marketing contact records, then by all means, you can go ahead and disable this feature. If the only source is customer insights journeys as the contact table, go ahead, you can use a consent center. But I do want you guys to be aware that there are consent fields on the contact record that you may want to look at. So just be aware of that. Now, To finish off, I wanted to touch on a few best practices when working with these feature switches. First one being enable only what you plan to use. Not everything needs to be turned on. In fact, there are some features that you may want to keep off if you do not want your users abusing it or misusing it. Because again, this is used not just for your user, but any changes here will be made globally to everyone in the marketing app. Now, the next thing I want to stress is ensure to test new features in a trial or sandbox environment. If you are unsure of what a feature does, but you're interested, just maybe go enable it in a separate environment, maybe even a trial environment. Just send up a new one, just kind of test it out and see, what does this actually do? Am I interested? If you are interested, then go ahead and you can enable it in prod. Now, occasionally, you will see a new preview feature that shows up in your feature switches, and it will have a preview label on it to let you know, hey, this is still in preview. While new features are very exciting, this doesn't always mean that they are ready for use. Microsoft is actively making changes, and preview features may still have some kinks. So I do want you guys to be aware of that. Don't get me wrong, I love testing out new features, and I do frequently enable them. But if I see that there's a bug or maybe there's room for improvement, I occasionally do turn it off because maybe it's something I don't want my team to be using if I know it's not perfect. So just be aware of that. And finally, I want to remind you that anything that is updated here is not user level. I know I've mentioned that multiple times in this session, but it is something that I want to drill into your head. Anything that you change in the feature switches section will be changed for everyone in this entire marketing app. So I just want to make sure that we are avoiding any surprises, because these features not only affect our internal users, but it can affect the messages that are going out. And especially if you're sending these out to very important clients or your customers and you want to look as best as possible to them, then we need to make sure that everything on our end is cleaned up and we are not making big mistakes, because I've seen big mistakes happen. So uh, please just remember, these changes affect everyone, not just yourself. And that's pretty much it. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. In the next session, we will be moving on into more journey related settings that may be helpful to configure before you send out your first journey. So please make sure to tune into that session as well. If you have any other questions or are looking for more information on the journey side, please feel free to go through the videos in the series. And if you don't find what you're looking for, feel free to reach out to us on our AlphaBOLD page and we'll review any new items. So thanks, guys, and have a great day. See you in the next one.